Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Folks, now we are going to go through the chapter 5, about 5 verses at a time. We're going to start with 1 through 5. Yogeshwar is going to read each verse in Sanskrit, talk about his meaning. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then I'm going to open it up for any thoughts, any questions, and we will go on. We'll cover as much as we can cover. Okay, so Yogeshwar, if you could read verse 1 and talk about what it means.
Arjuna Uvacha Sanyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha shansasi yachreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunischitam. So Arjuna is asking here that there are two things that you've been telling me. Yeah, you told me in the 3rd chapter, and I asked in the 3rd chapter, but this question has arose again. So which path should I be taking? Which one is the one that I should be taking? Yeah, that is good for me. Which one is the one that I should be taking? Is it living all the karma and just being at the center, or is it doing karma? Like, now if you just tell me that I should be at the center of my being, then why are you telling me that because the last verse in chapter 4, so it's saying you should use the sword of jnana and cut out everything else, yes, and then be in yoga and go for war. Like, why are you telling me both things? Like, tell me one thing that I should do. Tell me that I should just be at the center and leave alone the war, or just tell me that I just do the war and leave alone being at the center. So that's what Arjuna is trying to ask. But Krishna Bhagavan actually then replies, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Sanyasa karma yogascha nishreya sakaravabho tayostu karma sanyasat karma yogo vishishyate. There he's saying that both of them are actually paths that will lead you to where you want to go. It will lead you to the spiritual world. Both of them, Sannyasa and Karma Yoga, Sankhya or Karma Yoga, both of them will lead you there. But out of the two, now, since you're asking Yachreyo Etayorekam, since you're asking which one is good for me, I will tell you that Karma Yoga is good for you. Yes? Because I am talking to you and I will be telling you what is good for you. I do not want to tell you something that is good for somebody else and maybe not practical for you. So I am going to tell you what is good for you. And this is what is good for you. Do Karma Yoga, and being at the center will come. Yeah, it will come out of your doing the right action that I am telling you. So that is verse 2. Gyaya sanitya sannyasi yona dveshti nakangshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyade. So now they're saying that a sannyasi, who is a sannyasi? You're talking about karma yoga and sannyasa. So let me tell you who a sannyasi is. Sannyasi is actually a person who does not have any bounds. Yeah, he does not have any bounds to a person who does good to him or a person who does bad to him. Whether he receives something good, he doesn't want it more, like nakangshati. And even though he receives something bad, he will not have a bad attitude towards it as well. So sannyasi should be nirdvandva, a person who is out of the dvandva of two, good and evil, bad and good, everything, all that. So that person who is nirdvandva, sukham bandhat pramuchyate, he will, in a short time, let's not even say short time, in no time, yeah, he will actually be relieved of all these sansaric everything. Yeah. Sankhya yogo prithak balah pravadanti na panditaah ekamapyasthita samyak ubhayor vindate phalam. So a person who is calling Sankhya and Yoga different is a person who has childish mind. He has a childish kind of logic because he's calling them different. If you stay in one, you'll find the goal for both of them. It's like the coin analogy. Like if you go from one side, you'll get both of them. There's no going from one side and receiving only one. You'll get the whole thing at once. Yat sankhya prapyate sthanam tadyogairapi gamyate ekam sankhya cha yogam cha yapashyati sapashyati. The goal that you have to attain by Sankhya, you will get it by yoga as well. And a person who sees Sankhya and yoga as one, he is the person who sees. Now here we should know that before this, yeah, in chapter 2, Krishna himself, he talked about Sankhya separately and he talked about yoga separately. So the part where he's saying that Sankhya and yoga is the same. So a person who is actually who doesn't have any knowledge about spiritual world and he says that they're the same. That's not what he's saying. Know the differences. Know where both of them come from. Know how different they are. And then know that they're the same because they lead to the same thing. A person who doesn't know where the way to get to walk on those paths, we're not talking about that person. We're talking about a person who knows both paths are different in the practical way and different people will go for different paths. But the person who knows that all the people who go through any path will reach the same thing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. So I'm going to go through these 5 verses myself. I'm going to read the translation and make very brief comments. And then I'm going to invite you to talk about what you get from these verses. Please, feel free to express your thoughts. Please feel free to ask questions. We'll go, in a very interactive way. So this is verse 1. Arjun said, "O Shri Krishna, you praised karma sannyas, that is the path of renunciation of actions. And you also advised to do karma yoga, work with devotion. Please tell me decisively which of the two is more beneficial." Now, I want to point out here is that all of these, they start with questions, and asking of these questions is considered good in the Indian tradition. Each person has to ask their own questions. They have to remember, when we're talking about the guru, it says, find a good guru who has a connection with the Atma, and then ask him questions. Ask him questions with humility, but ask him questions. So you see Arjun coming at the same point from different angles. Okay. This is the 5th of Arjuna's 16 questions. Sri Krishna praised both renunciation of work and work done with devotion. So he's saying, how can you praise doing work with devotion and giving up of works at the same time? Arjuna is confused by these apparently equivocal instructions and wishes to understand. Okay, so that is the first one. The second one is the answer. Sri Krishna said, both the path of karma sannyas, renunciation of action, and karma yoga, working in devotion, lead to the supreme goal. But karma yoga is superior to karma sannyas. The The way I understand it is in terms of center and periphery. Center is very real. It's the powerful. That's where you want to be. Periphery is something that is facing you all the time. There is a temptation for people, and too many people, unfortunately, to say, if that is so, let me just give up the periphery so I can just go to the center. But it doesn't, world is not like that. The periphery is the periphery of the center. It is the expression of the center. You cannot run away from the periphery to get to the center. You have to see the connection. You have to see that the periphery flows from the center, the connection between them. And what he's saying is that if you're committed to take the responsibility and do the right action, and on the top of that, you are contemplative about what, about yourself, that is a surer path to the center than to say, not going to do anything. I'm going to just give up the periphery. Because then what will happen is that the periphery will keep on impinging on you. You will be sitting in Himalayas, but you'll be thinking about, this person did me wrong. You're not at the center, because the fight is not external. It is external, only small, and there is a lot of internal fight. The yoga trains you to act from the center. A karma yogi who does both spiritual and social duties. Social duties are done with the body while the mind is attached to God. Dear one, think always that all your actions are being observed by God or the Guru. So you're looking at all your actions from the center while you're doing them. We'll go to the verse 3. Karma yogis who neither desire nor hate anything should be considered always renounced, free from all dualities. They are easily liberated from the bonds of material energy. So the point here is not the existence of the periphery. It's about the attachment of the periphery, of yours focusing your attention on peripheral things as opposed to the center. So if you have your devotion and focus on the center, then you can be fully engaged with work as long as you don't remain attached to the consequences. So that's another point in number 3. Number 4, only the ignorant speak of Sankhya, renunciation of action or karma sannyas, and karma yoga, work in devotion, as different. Those who are truly learned say that by applying ourselves to any one of these paths, we can achieve the results of both. Now, I thought Yogeshwar did a fantastic job of making this point. And this is a crucial point. This is, again, it comes back to the center and periphery. The final one, the supreme state that is attained by the means of karma sannyas is also attained by working in devotion. Hence, those who see karma sannyas and karma yoga to be identical truly see things as they are. So it's a matter of attachment. A karma yogi can be karma sannyas yogi when he's not attached, when he's not affected by that. And it's a surer path. You can walk it truly in your own pace, with authenticity, and get to the center, instead of trying to achieve it quickly but imperfectly, because then you will neither have the periphery nor the center. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for comments. What did you get? What did you get from the verses 1 through 5? We're going to start with Evanik. Evanik, go ahead.
Yeah, the part that really struck me was this idea of attachment. And I used to always hear to be committed to something and not attached to it. And I never got it until I started reading the Gita. And the thing is, not being attached to you said consequences, but like the result is like just doing the work and knowing that the result is going to be what it's going to be. Is kind of like you can't control the outcome, you can only control what you do. But also, I think this idea of having an attachment to the peripheral of anything outside of you, it's that attachment of, again, the attachment of something that you can't control. You can't control what's going on outside of you, but you can control what's going on in the center. Now, I do have a quick question. Is the attachment to the center bad, or is there really such a thing as attachment to the center?
Go ahead, Yogeshwar. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, actually, attachment to the center, that actually is like, it's not like attachment to the peripheral at all. Yeah. When you're going towards the center, you're knowing yourself. And actually, even like in the Bhagavad, it's saying that what you use to get to the center, even that which you use will actually extinguish. Like we used an analogy of fire in the Gita in the previous chapter. Yeah. So what fire does is, even though you have the attachment of getting to the center, because you'll receive something big, so you have an attachment to go to the center. So when you reach the center, even that attachment will extinguish. So that's another thing.
Wonderful. I'll say two things. This attachment has two meanings. There is the material and spiritual, the same as we studied in Bible yesterday. There is water, there is attachment to physical things, which has a certain nature, like your need for water, the thirst. So you drink and then you need to drink again. And then you have the concept of this fountain in your heart, which is producing love. And you love that. That has a very different nature. Though we use the similar term of water, the living water, the exact difference between water and the living water is exactly attachment to water and attachment to living water. One is love, which keeps giving, which is stable. You can be there forever, because from that everything else proceeds. Whereas attachment to a temporary thing that is going to go away, and you are going to have all kinds of positive and negative feelings about it, because it is temporal. That is the difference. And you're absolutely right. There is actually the Karma Yoga is all about commitment without attachment. So commitment, like when you see Arjun acting, when he starts to actually start to fight, the kind of commitment he has is just incredible commitment, full commitment to action. But it is not attachment, in the sense that if there is something that goes wrong, he's going to continue to do whatever he should do. So the commitment is his spirit, the center, driving something in the periphery. So it's the arrow going that way from the center. That's the commitment. Attachment is arrow going parallel, from one point to the other in the periphery. You're saying you're trying to hold on to that, but you're saying, oh, that went like this. So that's the difference between commitment and attachment. Excellent question. Thank you. Next up is going to be Kevin, Jason, and Claudio. Kevin. And Kevin, if you could speak a little bit slowly so that your accent, everybody will get your accent, please. Thank you.
Yeah, my question, like my accent, very simple. Well, there's two dualism concept, Sankhya and yoga. How do you connect to the other concept? The formal follow, let's see, previous talk about formal follow function, figure ground, yin and yang, and the body, mind, water, river, center side you mentioned. Yeah, you pick. How do you from people
excellent.
from beginning?
Excellent, fantastic question, Kevin. But let us not take it today, because let us try to understand this concept first in great amount of detail, this with the same level that we have understood the other concept.
This is a basic question. If you don't know that to the yoga, those things, I would say that, because it's like the build block. You don't know that, you just keep turning around. When you talk, I understand. But the text, how connected is that?
No, that's understand. What you have to do is that what happens is that this is a very big point. See, all of this, Tao Te Ching, the Gospel of John, and Bhagavad Gita are making very deep points, and they are making it in their own way. So what I'm suggesting is that we should take the effort, each of us individually should take the effort to understand the concepts in their own terms first, because there is a richness to them, and they actually are capturing something about the nature of reality that the other concepts that we do not fully capture. So let us focus on that. And then by and by, as we are proceeding, we will go ahead and start.
Can I get a quick answer? Let's see, one sentence or two sentences describe this is the first
sure.
one. Yoga.
Sure. Let me pick one and let me go ahead and answer. So basically, you can think of it as center and periphery. So the function, the spirit is in the center. The matter and the form is in the periphery. Form follows function. So the spirit, the God in you, the God is shaping everything. That's also the Tao. Tao, which is at the center, is shaping 10,000 things, which are in the periphery, which are the form. So that's my quick answer. Next up, thank you, Kevin. Great question. Please keep asking such questions. Next up is going to be Jason, Claudio, Brian, Doug, Steve, and Prakash. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is that it's been bothering me for a long time about the in this Gita talking about the karma yoga. Okay, and I know what that means, but how does it connect with the yoga we talk about, like body position? I know they are not talking about this, but how is it related?
Sure, that's a fantastic question. So I'm going to step back and ask a more fundamental question to Yogeshwar. Yogeshwar, can you talk about what yoga actually means? And can you then talk about, address the question about karma yoga and hatha yoga?
Yes, so here there are two concepts. Actually, any spiritual path in Indian is called yoga. Even Sankhya is called yoga, Sankhya yoga. Yeah. So there is hatha yoga, there is karma yoga, there is Sankhya yoga, all those, even bhakti yoga. So you see the word yoga goes everywhere through, and it is a word used to say, like, this is a spiritual path that you have to take. Yeah. So what we say as karma yoga, that is doing your duty as it is.
Yogeshwar, let me just kind of add to it. So the closest, so I'm trying to give a word that everybody will get. So it's basically the way in Tao Te Ching. It's the. It is roughly translated. It is the way, the method of enlightenment. It is virtue. Virtue is another way of thinking about it. So these are all ways of getting to enlightenment. Go ahead, Yogeshwar.
Yeah, so mainly what karma yoga is about is doing your duty as it should be done. Yeah, and yoga as we know it in the Western world, that is mainly just, okay, it is a part whereby it gives you like the strength of the body, it gives you the strength of the mind as well. Yes, but there's a way that they only take it through 5 steps. You know, there are 8 steps in yoga, in the Yoga Sutras. So they only take you through the 5 steps, and then they leave the dharana and samadhi part out of it. Yeah. So actually, it is a way to reach enlightenment, a separate way of reaching enlightenment out of the karma yoga and Sankhya yoga. But you see, the way they leave out the last steps, then you only stay in the mind and the body concepts. You don't get to the enlightenment part.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. So folks, feel free to make any comments and ask questions. You can, it doesn't have to be just questions. You're welcome to state what you got from these verses 1 to 5, or ask questions, whatever you prefer, or both. Next up is going to be Claudio, Brian, and Doug. Claudio.
Yes, first of all, Happy New Year to everyone. Okay. Yes, I found this chapter very interesting. At the beginning of the chapter, it appears that Krishna is distinguishing between the renunciation and the karma yoga. Although he says it's important to practice both, he does appears to lean towards karma yoga, which is selfless action, not being concerned with the consequences of your works, being involved in the world but detached at the same time. You know, like not worrying about winning and losing, success, failure. The dualities of. And I believe the renunciation. I believe he's referring because yogi, the person, the expert who was speaking earlier, he mentioned sannyasa. So I believe that's connected to renunciation, because I remember doing some research on sannyasa, and it means renunciation, like retiring from the world, like the traditional Hindu spiritual life, where the renunciants will go out in the forest, like kind of like detach themselves physically, right? Going out and in order to detach themselves psychologically, inwardly, right? Detaching from the periphery, and then in order to but Krishna says that's not necessary, I guess. I'm guessing, right?
If you could just condense what are your big takeaways, big
that's
observations.
Sorry. So just you don't have to like detach yourself physically. You can stay in the world and do the karma yoga, which will liberate you inwardly and achieve nirvana or enlightenment. Yeah, that's my takeaway. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I like you kind of teasing out all the aspects of the text in your own language. That's fantastic. I really like that, because that's what you have to do. Each of us has to do. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Next up is going to be Brian, followed by Doug. And then we're going to go to Steve and Prakash. Folks, please feel free to keep asking questions. We want to make sure that everybody is fully engaged. Let's go ahead, Brian or Penny.
Okay. I had a question, because as I was reading this, to me, I mean, Krishna's talking with Arjuna, and Arjuna is like military soldier, etc. So to me, I thought he was recommending the karma yoga more for him, because he's a man of action in the world. And for him to try to renounce himself and go sit in the center somewhere just seemed totally foreign to the type person he has been before that. But I don't know if he's meaning it, it's better for everybody. But when I was reading it, to me, it made sense that he would say karma for Arjun because of the type person he had been.
Yogeshwar, would you like to answer that?
Yes. See, that's why I pointed out that when he says tayostu karma sannyasat karma yoga vishishyate, that karma yoga is better. Now, when he says that out of the two, like karma yoga is better, he's looking at Arjuna, and I pointed out this before as well. He's looking at Arjuna and telling him that it is good for you. Now, you see, it's good for Arjuna, and it's also good for people who are like Arjuna as well. Yeah. So you should do selfless action. Well, while you're not really good at being at the center or just thinking from the center. Yeah. So that is a way of getting to the center as well, and it's really a really good way of getting to the center.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. I would add that it is a lot easier for most people, because what he's saying, and Krishna actually elaborates on this later, what he's saying is that in order to get just giving up at the periphery and getting to the center right, a lot of things have to come together, because you really need to be very clear in your thinking. You really need to have a clear idea of the center, which very, very few people have. So for most people, you have to start, because the crucial part here is that they are integrated. The center and periphery is integrated. The spirit and matter is integrated. It's one thing. It's one coin. And it is a lot easier to have, working with the periphery, with your karma yoga, and being contemplative. So trying to formulate what is going on, asking questions, trying to have, having the devotion towards the center. That combination, it's like you're connected to both things and you're bringing them together. So it's a much more stabler and surer way for most people. That's not to say there could be some exceptional people who can do it otherwise, but for most people, I certainly think that they're saying that that's the case. Next up is going to be Doug, Steve, Prakash, William, and Jason. Doug.
I have a couple of little points and then maybe a question
Sure.
that maybe can be dealt with later.
Take your time.
Know.
Take your time. Go ahead.
But the yoga for me, it always has helped me to realize that the word yoke, or yoking an animal in harnesses, the root of that is yoga. It goes back to India. And so that it's a lot about yoking everything you have, all of your mind, brain, body, intuitions to an intention, which in this case is a union with God, or his intention and not your own, which oddly applies in theater. And I had a really brilliant, he was a British, Scottish film director who actually talked about, in a film class, he was incredibly eclectic and taught Aristotle better than scholars, but he said, the more you go in, you eventually end up going to the edge of the universe. And this is like a teacher of script writing who was saying this. And or the more you go out to the edge of the universe, the more you end up inside, and that somehow came to me while we were reading this and in the discussion listening to people.
Can I comment quickly on this before
yes,
we go on?
Sure.
In the Western philosophy tradition, Aristotle is the person who talks about this, the integration between the concretes and the abstract, the material. And Aquinas is a great example of that. He's Aristotelian. He talks about the cogitative sense, which starts with the periphery by taking information from the senses, processing it, doing the combination of it to form a conception of what is meaningful, and then using that to form your evaluations and driving action. So this loop going from the periphery to the center and performing that loop relentlessly as a way of being spiritual and by being effective in your action in the world. This is, this is the cogitative sense is Aquinas' way of thinking about it. And that basic idea comes from Aristotle, that spirit and matter are integrated. And, theater is a good, so thank you for bringing it up. Please go on, sir.
Yeah, I mean, and Aristotle sort of said tragedy is the imitation of the action. And for the Greeks, an action was a movement of spirit, usually from the inside to the outside, but it could come from the outside and slap you down, like a deus ex machina at the end of a tragedy, where God comes in and saying, you're all messing it up, here's what you should do. That it went both ways for Aristotle and on the poetic. The other thing I wanted to mention, which supports what Yogeshwar said, is that this translator who writes essays, poems, novels, he's also a nuclear radiologist and a theorist about that. So that really sort of proves his point that this can apply to the arts and the sciences, the theory and the practice. And that kind of leads to my question. Although before I go to that, Bucky Fuller did that vow of silence for 2 years, trying to figure out words and what everything was about and what he was trying to do. And the more he went inward, at the end of that, he said, I found out we're here from each other. So it like boomeranged him back out to the world and trying to solve the world's problems. The more he went inside, the more it took him back out to the world. But my question, and maybe this is for a later time.
Let me make one more comment on what you said, because it's just so interesting. That is about aesthetics, right? If you look at the nature of art, that is exactly what the art is trying to do. And it is not surprising that in the poetics of Aristotle that you will find it most clear. What is the artist trying to do? They have a spiritual vision and they have to make it manifest to others in the periphery so that they can take what is being presented at the periphery to come back to the spiritual vision that is being transmitted to them. That's what art does at its highest. And that's why I think it's a very good example. Go ahead, sir.
Well, and at Black Mountain College, there was a pottery teacher, I think wrote who I think his name's M.I. Richards, I'm not sure. But she wrote a book called Centering that was often given out to acting classes, but it's out how you center the clay to build on this spinning wheel to build the shape. But that was given to actors a lot, how to find your center so that you can emerge out of that. You can bounce out of the center onto the stage. So that's interesting. My question really, because as Yogeshwar was talking, the theory, the practice, the theory, one hears that a lot in music in the West and in the East. And I don't know, I've listened to it for decades, but I don't know that much about Indian music. So I'm curious if these ideas, as presented in this book, play a role in the theory and practice of Indian music. And that's maybe a bigger question to cover at a later time. But again, that's going in to play something that goes out.
Yogeshwar, would you like to talk about it? Or I can
Indian
talk about
music.
it if you're not familiar with music.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with
Okay,
Indian
so then
music.
let me take that. So I'm a big fan of Indian classical music, and Indian classical music is a spiritual discipline. In fact, originally, the singers would sing with their back to the audience because they would be singing to God. They would be singing in the temple. They're singing to God. And the fact that it's a performance is incidental because it is their, it's called Nada Yoga. So it's the yoga of sound, of trying to express the deepest thoughts that you have through sound. So it's a very good example, and at some point we will elaborate a lot on it. Next up is going to be Steve. Steve, go ahead. Steve, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi. Yes, I'm enjoying the discussion, and I'm familiar with the sort of Vedic and Indian concepts, and they're useful, just as useful as many of the others. Something I'm interested in just hearing from you people is the concept of passion, because I find passion, you may want to call it love, or you can use other words for that, but I find it's a big factor. So whether you're talking about the traditional kind of love, like parents for children, can obviously motivate people to do great things for their children. An athlete, he can love the sport that he partakes in, for the love of the sport. And I think that gets into concepts, for example, of people who just look at whether they're going to win or lose, and they just do anything they can to win, lose something in the process, right? So that can play into being passionate, but knowing the difference between I'll kill somebody just to win this game versus
Let me do one thing. What we're going to do is that the chapter 4 is Bhakti Yoga, where this topic will be taken up fully. So what we are doing is that we move here very, very systematically. We try to stay close to the text, try to stay around the topic that we are discussing, because we're going to cover this entire area. So we'll definitely get to that, sir. Thank you, Steve. Next up is going to be Prakash. Prakash, go ahead.
Hey, hi, Srikant. Hi, Yogeshwar.
Hey.
So my question is actually a simple question. Is in Karma Yoga, how do you know what is your karma? And I'm referring to more complex situations. If I have to go to office, I know I have to go to office. But other conflicting situations where there are 3 choices and all 3 choices are, none of them is sin, all 3 are okay, but they will have 3 different results, especially for the other person or other people involved into it. So
wonderful, excellent question. And what I'll do is that Yogeshwar is going to be back in a couple of minutes. I'll have Yogeshwar take the question, but let's go to the next one. I'll remind Yogeshwar about this. Next up is William. William, go ahead. It's going to be William, Jason, and David. William.
Hi, thank you, Srikant. I wanted to bring up that this renunciation isn't just for physical objects. It's also for objects of the mind. These are also objects, such as concepts, beliefs, and so on. Religions, faiths, these are all objects, they're models. And if I might, could I introduce a metaphor? The children are like the senses. They look at the toys, the objects of the senses, the perceptions. The mother watches the children. The mother's like the mind. She's watching the senses. She's watching the children and the children's objects. But awareness, chi or Chaitanya in the tradition, such as in Sachit Ananda, is watching the mother, watching the mind. So we must understand that the mind itself is not the ultimate subject.
Wonderful. Excellent point, William. That's a fantastic point. Excellent point. The point is, so Yogeshwar, so the question and comment that William had was renunciation. Does it apply just to physical things or to mental things?
Renunciation actually applies to both, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So renunciation is basically staying at the center. That is renunciation. And you see in chapter 6, it actually starts with Gyaya Sanitya Sannyasi, Yona Dveshti Nakamsha. The person who is a sannyasi will be at the center. He is not at the peripheral, basically. Yeah? So that is the real sannyas. Not only physical, but mental as well.
Excellent. And one more question from Prakash was, how do you know what your karma is? How do you figure it out?
Yeah, basically, it's like a journey through life, like how we figure out that accountant is what I have to be, or scientist is what I have to be. That's how you know, like karma is what I have to do, like which karma I have to do, yeah, and what I'll be able to do best.
Wonderful.
It's like a life journey, and it's a personal journey. Basically.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Jason, David, and Tejal. Jason.
Hi, yeah, I like this verse 1 to 5, and I like to share what I learned, and please correct me.
Jason, please take your time. Please take your time. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand correct. So please let me know if you agree or something. So I think here talk about karma yoga and sannyasa. So my understanding, for example, I'm doing working for a company. My boss asked me to make a presentation and let's say $1 million contract we supposed to sign. Okay, so I just have to prepare as much as I can. I should not think about too much. Why I'm doing this, it does make sense, why I'm spending so much time. So I just focus. So that's karma yoga. Then when I go there, I do my best to present. I should have a renunciation. So that means there's a sannyasa. So I should detach from what's the result, whether or not the contract being signed, the audience is in the bad mood, so they are not interested in my presentation. So that's the sannyasa I will do it. So back to the text. So as me as a salesperson or the presenter, just like Arjuna, right? He's a warrior. So we should focus more on the karma yoga. So my boss, okay, who is send me out for the presentation, same as Arjuna's father, who is the king. So they are more concerned, they are in the center, more concerned about the result, whether or not we got the contract signed or whether or not we can win this battle. So they should more focus on the sannyasa than the karma yoga. Am I correct? Okay, so thank you.
Yogeshwar, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, so it's like whether you're in yoga or you're in sannyas, the outcome should not be affecting you in both. Yeah, because even in karma yoga, it is there that you see in chapter 2 where we talked about karma. So you do your karma, you don't have attachment to the goal, yeah, to the outcome basically, but you never leave karma. So that is the main shloka, that's the main verse for karma. And karma yoga actually puts all of them together in a way. It puts all the karma together. So the part of you doing your karma well and not being attached to the outcome, it is all karma yoga. It is all part of karma yoga. So sannyasa yoga will come in when you are talking about staying in the middle, like not like being out of the peripheral, just be in the middle. That is where sannyasa yoga, sankhya yoga will come.
Thank you. Jason, so basically sannyas yoga in application of sannyas yoga for you would be for you to quit your job. That would be sannyas yoga.
To quit the job?
That is sannyas yoga. That means to give up all action.
Oh,
that is what sannyas yoga. So that is the distinction Krishna is making. He's saying to Krishna that sannyas yoga is quitting your action, stopping all action. And karma yoga is doing action. He's saying, if you do your action, if you're taking everything that you described is called karma yoga. So you're doing your duty, you're doing what you should do. You're not getting affected by, you're not getting attached to the particular results. You're committed to doing the right thing, and you keep doing the right thing and not get attached to the result. That is called karma yoga. The contrast to that is another path. Like, for example, in India, you will see people who just leave everything, put on like these orange clothes and go into Himalayas and live on just water and very little food for 12 years. That is what sannyas yoga looks like.
So if I can interrupt, so that means, as the example, as my job, so that means I just do practice karma yoga. To
Yep.
certain time, okay, I decide that probably enough. So I just practice sannyasa. So I quit my job and then
No, that's not good. No. So that is not sannyas yoga still. Sannyas yoga means you leave your home, you leave your family, you leave everything and go into Himalayas. That is what sannyas, basically go away from all material things.
So both
That's
are
what-
good. Both are good. Just in the different life stage, you have to do different.
And what he's saying is that for most people, karma yoga is the right path. And it's a
Oh.
surer path. Because if you leave things, not because you love the center, but because you don't want to deal with the periphery. The periphery doesn't go away. The periphery remains there. Okay, you will still think about things. You know, you will be sitting in Himalayas thinking about who did me wrong. And then you will have neither. So that's why he's saying that karma yoga. Please go on. You wanted to go through other verses? Or you're done?
Yeah, I'm done.
You're
Yeah,
done.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
Very good. Very
Thank you for correct my misconception. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Next up is going to be David, followed by Tejal. David.
Yes, Shrikant, thank you, Yogeshwar. I wanted to see if I understand something. My understanding is that the focus of Hinduism is enlightenment, and that one of the, or an aspect of this is what's called the Mahavakyas. And specifically this sense that we are all divine, but that you can't just tell a person, okay, you're divine, we're all divine, we're all Jesus Christ. And it's a matter of a process of getting there. And that these yogas and that all the Vedas and that Bhagavad Gita are about helping people to work their way through that process in whichever manner is best. These different yogas are all of these different concepts. I mean, the Bhagavad Gita, the different chapters are each different yogas. It's a matter of which is the path, again, the way that you're saying that's right for each person. So it's a matter of how to get to that enlightenment, that understanding through these different yogas as being, okay, you can do it physically with these positions, you can do it with karma, you can do all these different models. And we are, through the Vedas and through the Bhagavad Gita, going to explain to the people all these different processes. Some people may never get there, may never understand it, but you find the path that works for you to obtain that understanding of finally that you are divine. Is that a correct approach or understanding or part of this?
Yogeshwar?
Yes, actually, that is the thing, because whereby he says, Krishna says that what you attain by yoga, you also attain by sannyasa. So the attainment he's talking about is the enlightenment that you're saying. Yes, it is. And we, like, because we can only talk about the way, so in all the scriptures and all, it's how to attain the enlightenment. So basically, enlightenment is something you cannot really talk about. You have to use metaphors and you have to use examples. So it is really good to talk about the way you get to the enlightenment. Yeah. So the way is described everywhere, and that is how you'll get to the enlightenment. And your point was correct, whereby enlightenment is the main thing, and then all these are just different ways in Gita to get to it.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. I want to add something. I mean, when I was going through the chapter 5, I was really struck by this point of this integrated approach that the Indian philosophy has. So what he's saying is that all of this is just one thing. There is the center, there is the periphery, and there is your mind in the middle somewhere. You can work on any of these things. And if you're doing the right thing, if you're doing it well, you'll basically end up at the same point. Whenever you do something, you have to put your everything in it. You can't just simply be jumping from here and there and not really grasping the knowledge, not really taking your responsibility, not really paying attention to the center. What he's saying is that all of it is one. Be committed to achieving the center, being at the center. Tattvamasi, that is your natural place. There are many ways of getting there. Here are the ways. Choose one that works for you. Follow it in your action, in your heart, with full commitment, and you will get there. That's how I see it. It's like it's a very profound integration of the spirit, the material world, and the mind. Next up is going to be Tejal. Tejal, go ahead.
Yeah. So I have a question. The person who renunciates material things or worldly desires and somehow goes beyond ethical concerns. So isn't that person somehow realizing nominal or true self or true nature of a reality? And isn't it, somehow reminds or shows some similarities to Plato's allegory of the cave, realizing its true forms of nature? Here in Indian context, if we give up, we can actually realize the truth of reality. Isn't it related somehow? That's my question.
Yogeshwar, would you like to address that?
Yeah.
So Yogeshwar, by the way, you don't have to address any question that you don't want to address, okay? If you say, look, I don't have much to say on it, that's fine. That's a perfect answer. Go ahead.
Okay, fine. Basically, yeah, the Plato's allegory of the cave. So getting out and actually experiencing the outer world is enlightenment. Yeah. Now, how you do it is another thing. Now, one thing is explanation, like you have to explain to somebody that this is this and this, everything. And you tell him what is outside, and he believes and he goes out. Another way is you actually tell him to walk outside. Yeah. So he has to walk outside and then he will get there. He has to, but still he has to believe in you that there's something out there. So enlightenment is like getting out there and just seeing everything that is there. Now, the way you do it is totally another thing. That may differ by different types of people.
Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. I will make a point that, in Western philosophy, you can see it as a battle between Plato and Aristotle. This pretty much everything that I'm seeing is Aristotelian, not Platonic, because Plato puts a very stark difference between the two worlds. This is saying that this is center and periphery, that periphery comes from the center and falls to the center. So there is this back and forth. It's very much of a Aristotelian way. So I would look at Aristotle to look for analogies. Next up is going to be Steve, followed by Kevin. Steve. Steve, you need to unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, I'm interested just how this all works, outside, inside, renunciation, etc. And, I mean, it seems if we renunciate too much, that's maybe not a good thing, because then some of these natural, I used the word before, passions and everything, if we renunciate too much, maybe we become too neutralized and not is much externally oriented. So again, I'm sort of interested in how this neutrality, potentially too neutral, might keep us from what we need to achieve, whether karmically or however you want to phrase it, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let me put it as a question, Yogeshwar. Can you achieve what you need to achieve in the world without attachment?
Basically, that is what Krishna is talking about, that is what is supposed to happen. Now, the question whereby he was asking about getting too detached from the world. Now, that's where the point comes in, that you see in some types of, there's some cultures whereby detachment is everything, yeah, and only detach. But that also leaves out the point of being at the center. Only detach and you're not at the center. So detaching more than you are at the center, that will bring a problem, because you are not ready for it and you are detaching from the world. So there are two things. You should detach, but you should be ready for it by being at the center. Because if you're at the peripheral and you're detaching the peripheral, you're actually losing parts of yourself, because you are at the peripheral. You've not yet received the center. So that's why they're talking about karma yoga, whereby if you're not getting the point of getting at the center, you should do karma yoga and get very good at your work, actually, without getting attached. And that's how you'll receive the center. That's how you'll get to the center.
Wonderful. Next up is going to be Kevin, followed by Doug. Kevin.
My question is regarding to the five fifths. It's about Sankhya and yoga. If it is as one, if as do I'm thinking about personal choice and judgment. So can I select one of yoga or over to Sankhya, or select both, or select neither, or move away from center? Then maybe following question versus how can I define the center? My judgment is correct. Thank you.
How do you choose between Sankhya and Karma Yoga, Yogeshwar?
Yeah, now, first thing is, because it's a personal endeavor, you should actually, it's a way of life. It's like you choose your career. So you'll be able to choose as you do certain things, as you do certain practices. And another thing, choosing neither is not an option. You are somewhere already. Like you see, it's like you're asking someone, should I choose to be an introvert or an extrovert? It's like you're not choosing to be, you are already somewhere. Yeah, you already, like, maybe because you can't also be introvert and extrovert, you can't be 100% one side. There's a part, like it's part. So you're part somewhere and you're part somewhere. It's like a percentage of you that maybe you're good at some part of extrovert and some part of introvert. Yeah? So 60%, 40%, or 70-30, there's that part of you that is always in the middle. So in the same way, in Sankhya and yoga, there are two things. One is that you have to choose one way, because even though you're 70% extrovert, you are extrovert. You're not introvert. Yeah. So the same way, you are 70% Sankhya. Like that's who you are, basically. It's your swabhava. So you should choose that way. But don't forget that the 30% of yoga in you is still there. It's, these ways of getting to enlightenment is actually based on people. It's not based on like just scriptures. Yeah. The scriptures were written based on people, the psychology of people, the way people will understand those things, the way people can act and then go to the path of enlightenment. So you are somewhere and then you have to get better at it, basically.
Excellent point. I just want to add one thing. I mean, one of the core principles here is the respect each practitioner of each of these yoga have for the others. Because it's like you're saying, look, I am following my path and he's following his path. and there is a respect. And what that does, that respect is, I think, also crucial, because that is actually saying that you're taking this main path, but there is this guidance mechanism that you have kind of feedback from rest of the world about if you're pursuing karma yoga, you're trying to be contemplative at the same, you're being contemplative to some extent. You're learning from other people a little bit, and that is provides, because it's all going to the same place. Next up is going to be Doug, followed by Adrinary. Doug.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to the issue of being attached to the fruits of the actions and getting something done. I think sometimes it's hard to get anything done if you're so attached to the fruits that it rattles you and you get stressed and you can't work from your best intuitions and your most powerful observations. You have to be pretty relaxed. And I think it's kind of like for an actor, if they really want everybody to love them and get great reviews, it's very hard for an actor to commit to the action of their character because they're playing their own action. I want them to love me, as opposed to the action of Hamlet, which is to purify Denmark. You know, there's a different intention. And if that can't come alive, if the actor's intention to be successful, you know, Hamlet's willing to lose everything to accomplish his goal, and he does. He accomplishes his goal, he loses everything.
Yeah, beautiful example. I think the way I personally see it is the issue of focus on the center. If you're focused on center of what you are, what you're trying to do, the effects are just effects, because your mind is still focused on the center. The moment you're saying, how is this person going to view me? You're now looking at effects happening in the periphery. You have lost touch. And in so doing, you have lost touch. You asked about Indian classical music. People who are singing from their heart to God. They are not really singing for the audience. So suppose somebody doesn't get them, is not going to affect them, because it is just between them and God. Thank you. Next up is Adrinary. Adrinary, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to say thank you. This is my first time attending to these kind of events. I actually just picked the event randomly. I'm in a moment in my life that I'm questioning a lot about my life and the decisions that I make. And I found this really helpful because I'm one of those persons that focus so much on the results, or I'm so attached to the results that the commitment that I put towards the thing, it makes them seem now like, I don't know how to explain it, that I'm more attached to the result rather than the commitment, right? Mm-hmm. That it should be the other way around, that I should be more aligned with the commitment, and then whether the result is good or bad, I think that shouldn't matter, as long as I know the commitment would is adding something to my personal, right?
Absolutely. So thank you for coming. You're always welcome here. What I would recommend is to actually listen to the Gita, actually read the Gita, because what we are covering here is just a very small fraction. This is an entire system of thought. And as you can see, that basically it speaks to people. It speaks to common experiences, very deep questions that everybody has. And that's the power of this work. So I strongly recommend actually reading the Gita. You can listen to the Gita. It is very short. It's only like 40 pages in Sanskrit text. You can listen to the whole thing in a couple of hours. So that's what I would recommend. And
no, definitely.
We do this, and we do this every day. So it's on our meetup is called 52 Living Ideas, and you're always welcome here. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to Steve. Steve.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Now here's a thought too, and I like what the
previous gentleman said that you know, there is a way to not focus on yourself, you know, with the example of the actor, etc. Yeah, that's, I guess, if we're more, you know, along the karmic path, that we're getting closer and closer to, you know, let's say enlightenment. But let's say some people are lower on the path, and they maybe they're gonna have to be reborn quite a few times, you know, to get there. And in their incarnation currently, it may be more useful for their karmic to actually play through some of these lower, call them desires or whatever, that, you know, Buddhism says to renounce them. But maybe this person's never going to get to the next step unless
Let me ask it as a question. Yogeshwar, what do you think?
About that question, even in Gita, see, they're talking about 4 types of bhaktas in the 7th chapter. And they're also talking about the people who have desires, and they're actually worshipping other devatas. It's also said in the Gita. So it is there, but the understanding that you should have is, I want to do it in this incarnation. I want to do it now. Yeah. Why wait for 2, 3 more incarnations that I will just get there sometime? Yeah. So it should be an endeavor, because what happens is, if I'll get there in 100, why should I even try now? That's what happens normally. So we should try getting there right now. You should do your best, basically. And then whether you get there or not is another thing. So you'll have other stuff. You like good, that will be decided by your nature or how many are remaining. But at least you've done your best. Actually, in a way whereby some works like music or something, if a person has composed a very good piece of music, he's actually content with it, even though he doesn't get good back from the audience. He's just actually content with the piece of music that he has made. That's what should be here. You should be content with your life because you've done the best.
Yeah, excellent point. I mean, in the last chapter, Krishna was saying that Nyan will burn up all your karma. So if you do the right thing, a lot of things are possible to you, because that center, you know, you have Atma, you have God in you. You have God in you. That is the message here. And that potential, you don't want to waste, you know, you want to do the best you can to make the most of it. Next up is Kanishka. Kanishka, go ahead.
So this was a question that I had, and it's about whether Gita does have any mention of interpreting it in a way like a curriculum. So I recognize myself as a person who would be most comfortable following karma yoga. That's what I think right now. But if I try to go down this path, is there a way to get the most enlightenment out of my path? And does the Gita mention any actionable item like that?
Go ahead, Yogeshwar.
See, now the thing is, when we talk about karma yoga, sankhya yoga, we normally see, we're talking about here, what we're talking about is concepts. Like, you may have a bangle or a piece of jewelry or an earring. Yeah. Now, if somebody tells you an earring is gold, yeah, you'll see it as gold. And then when somebody shows you a bangle made of gold, then you'll think, is it gold? Yeah. So the concepts we're talking about, karma and sankhya here, are like the gold that is inside, not the earring, yeah, or the bangle. But what now in the whole of Gita, what Krishna will tell you about is the gold. He's not going to talk you through the earring or what you see in this world as a earring or a bangle or any other piece of jewelry that you'll put on. So actually it is, in a way, the earring is gold, but if somebody tells you that this earring is gold, then you're not wishing to understand that also a bangle is gold. That wouldn't help. Yeah. So they're all different forms of the same thing in a way. So the question you're asking here about one specific karma yoga that you can do and you reach enlightenment, that is actually tailored to you. It's like you're asking someone who doesn't know your weight or the structure of your body to make a suit for you. Yeah, that would not help. Somebody should know you inside out to tailor a way for you in karma yoga.
Got it. Thank you, Yogeshwar. So Yogeshwar, what I want to do now is to give people an overview of what the chapter 5 is doing. So if you could talk a little bit about chapter 5, and then I'm going to invite people to talk about what they got from the meetup, about the format, if this is working. And I want to get your feedback, everybody's feedback on the format of this meetup. So in maybe like between 2 to 5 minutes, even if you take 10 minutes, that's fine. Just give a overview of what this chapter does as a whole.
So first of all, what we have talked about, Sankhya Yoga, that's the first 5 verses. And then Krishna takes it to the person who is enlightened. And he talks about the characteristics of that enlightened person again, because he has already talked about them in chapter 4. But now again, in another way, yeah, because you need to talk about all the angles. You come from 360 degrees with the angle. And he is saying a person who is Sthita Pragya, who is seated at the center, is actually like in the whole body, he's seated at the center, and everything that happens in the peripheral is just whatever happens, whether it is good or bad, it's just not him. He knows that it's not me and it doesn't affect him. Yeah. And then goes on to talk about concepts of samdarshi now after verse 15. So that concept of samdarshi, the samabhava, that is mainly seeing God in everyone, in everything, not even in everyone, but everything as well. Yeah. So you see God in a person, an animal, and even a rock that is there. You're seeing God in that rock. So that is a sthiti that you reach. That is a place that you reach whereby you get to know that you actually understand everything in that way. You actually perceive everything in that way. That this is how everything is. Yeah. So, and then he talks of then in the last part, he's talking about Brahma Nirvana, and that is talking about the state of peace that he in is. So the Sthit Pragya is not taken away by the peripherals and is in the center, and he receives so much peace, like the fountain of water, and it's just flowing through him continuously, and there's no end.
Wow. Thank you for that summary, Yogeshwar. Now I want to hear from people about this format. I keep on experimenting with different formats to fit the material that we are going through. So as first, I'm going to call on people who have attended at least 5 or 10 of these meetups to talk about, give us feedback about how this format is working. I'm proposing to continue this format just in the same way, take time to explicate what each of them is saying through conversation with Yogeshwar, and then open it up. Everybody can make comments, questions, and we will go at whatever pace we can to cover this work. So we'll start with Doug, followed by Joe. Doug, what do you think?
Yes, I think all of the formats have been interesting experiments, and to borrow something from what we've been studying tonight, I think all the formats lead to the same end. So I think whatever you do with it, you're getting to the same place. But I do think this is good to read the whole chapter and then break it down into smaller verses, and it allows to really begin to understand the words. But I think all of the discussions have been really interesting. They've all gotten to the same mountaintop, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Next up is Joe, followed by Jyoti. Joe.
And I am going to have to leave pretty soon. So if I jump out.
It's always wonderful to have you here, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think this is my fourth, and I watched one, and I like this one the best. I really like Yogeshwar, presenting in the beginning, giving us an idea of what it is, and then opening up to questions, and then getting that feedback, and then going through the chapter, reading it, and then having going through each part, methodically. I think that that's a really good formula for me. I was a little bit behind this week, so it really helped me out with understanding. So that this is a really helpful dialogue, and I think that you and Yogeshwar actually really work well together, and bringing different, not different perspectives, but different ways of articulating the story. So it's really been helpful to me. I think that this has probably been the best format yet.
I agree. I agree. Next up is going to be Jyoti, followed by Maritza. Jyoti.
I agree with Joe. I think in last few recitals of the verses, they were very repetitive, like they went over and over, over and over. And this one is excellent. Yogeshwar started, and then Shrikant gave his summary and simplified it a little bit. For the lay person, this is really good. A person who has no background and is coming here for the first time. This is nice. This is good to hear and get a gist of it. So I think if you carry on with this, everybody else will like it too. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. Appreciate that. Next up is Maritza, Tejal, and Claudio. Maritza.
I agree with both Joe and Jyoti. This one is my favorite. For the ones I didn't attend, I've watched online, and I really like the beginning. You go, it's first there's an explanation, and then you have the whole reading, and then you go line by line. I feel like it keeps going, like you're looking in, and then you're looking at the big picture, and that makes for a really nice, well-rounded discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. Next up is Tejal, Claudio, and Dave. Tejal.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I think we are not just reading, but clearing our most fundamental doubts. Sometimes it happens with me that I don't understand the basic words of that particular context. So I cannot link with the whole actual concept. But this is something best. This is the best platform for the beginner like me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tejal. Next up is Claudio, followed by Dave. Claudio.
Yeah, I think this format is great, actually. It seems to go in harmony, very smoothly, no interruptions, and you have someone who's very knowledgeable who sets the tone, and you gain a lot of important information. So, comparing it to other meetups, this one's very, very smooth, and it's harmonious. I like the feel. You get good vibes. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Claudio. Next up is going to be Dave. Dave.
Yeah, my friend Shikan, I like the expression, don't bite off more than you can chew. This 5 verses, it seems like we're just about right. And then letting everybody have a go at it. Some getting very deep, and but I'm here to try to make sense of it. And hopefully by the time we go through all of it, and as you say, it looks like it's not too long, then maybe I'll make sense of it. But it's quite interesting, and I'm very glad we're on this journey together. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. All right, folks. So I think it's unanimous. Everybody seems to like this format, and I like it very much because I'm trying to read as much as possible. I don't know Gita well, I probably understand it maybe 1%, 2%, 3%, something like that. And I'm trying to learn and, trying to kind of formulate it beforehand for me. And then, having Yogeshwar talk about it and then going back and forth with him and then having everybody else talk about it, I think it's just fantastic. Yogeshwar, do you think it worked out well?
Yeah, it worked out well. It was good. Actually, describing one concept all through and 360 degrees, it's really good.
Wonderful. All right, folks, thank you very much. So we will continue starting again, chapter 5 from verse 6 onwards. Evanik, you wanted to say something?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. And you will notice that Yogeshwar is picking up on the living water. I hope you didn't miss that reference.
No, I did not.
He's beginning to talk the Tao, and he's beginning to talk the Gospel of John as well. So it's delightful. And Yogeshwar, it's wonderful to be on this journey with you. I think you're a kind of truth seeker, like many of us here. So I think you're just an amazing addition to what we are doing. So we're just honored to have you here and delighted to have you here. And we expect, we hope that we'll learn something from you, and hopefully you will learn something from everything that we are doing in the Tao, and even, and the interesting thing, not just Tao and the Bible, but interesting thing, and this is a comment that Jason made, who is actually translating Tao Te Ching. He said, look, during this time, he's learning more because it's so many people coming at the same work through so many different perspectives that you are normally not aware of. So even for somebody who has spent a lot of time on something, this is useful. It's a very enriching experience for all of us. So thank you very much, Yogeshwar. See you next time. Bye, everybody.
See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.